Sometimes you write a story kind of in a blur and you don't quite remember the story, but when you look back, you think, yeah, that was an interesting story. And that's what I want to talk about today when it comes to my second story that I ever had published, hashtag I am human. It was published in this anthology, Dear Robot, about 10 years ago. This was another friend anthology that she asked me to submit to, much like the previous story that I had talked about before, Blind Woman and Her Spiders. This anthology was something that came up about a year after that anthology, and I did not, again, really have a story, but I wanted to submit. This is unique because this is a anthology of epistolary literature. So epistolary is letters, um, uh, it can be emails back and forth. I chose to write a magazine article as my short story, but they're not straightforward stories. And I don't think I actually ever had written an epistolary story before. So this was kind of a new thing, you know. I had never really thought about it, and it actually has been really fun. I haven't written any epistolary stories since, but that doesn't mean I never will. And it was a fun experience. I really enjoyed writing this story. But to be honest with you, I kind of forgot about it. After it was published and the book came out, um, I didn't really revisit it that much. And it was interesting because I knew I wanted to do this video, and I went back and said, I don't even remember much what this story was about. But it was a decade ago, so, you know, I I can't remember everything. I have a very good memory, but what I remember was after Kelly notified me that she was doing this anthology, and I said I knew I wanted to submit something. I kind of thought about, the future and what trends I saw happening. I had written a science fiction story before, Future Virtual Love, and I've talked about that already on the channel, so you can go back to that video or search the playlist and you can find that video. That story, Future Virtual Love, was published after this story, but it was written before this story. So that's kind of like the oddness of it, is some stories, even though you've written them a long time ago, they take longer to publish versus another story that I wrote, pretty quickly, and that got published before. But I wrote Future Virtual Love, and it was sort of soft science fiction. And so I knew I wanted to write another sort of soft science fiction, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to talk about. And with Future Virtual Love, I saw how virtual reality was sort of moving into our everyday lives. And so when I wrote hashtag I am human, I wanted to talk about what would make someone human in the future, or distinguish them. I didn't write about robots. I didn't write about AI. I wrote about plastic surgery. The premise of the story is that there is a reporter who is writing an article about our changing future. It's like a series of articles. And the main character, the writer, his name is Kieran, and he is interviewing various people who get plastic surgery that not only makes them look like everybody else, but also gives them the ability to look like everyone. So, in other words, you get DNA surgery, and it basically wipes out your regular DNA. And instead, you are implanted with a baseline, generic DNA. It wipes out your hair color, eye color, to just a baseline color. And then you can get implants that will change your outward appearance. So if one day you want blonde hair, you can have blonde hair. If you want red hair, the next day you can have red hair. And this is a trend that a lot of teenagers and younger people are doing so that it sort of quote unquote evens the playing field. It was an interesting premise. It's not really based on any kind of science that I was reading about at the time. Although I will say in the last 10 years, I find it very interesting that there are these trends now that people are getting plastic surgery and they kind of are starting to look like everybody else. You know, everybody gets the Botox, everybody gets the lip filler, everybody gets the shading of their noses. They contour their noses with makeup so that they all kind of look the same way. It's sort of a makeup trend slash beauty trend, because it's not just women who are doing it; it's men too. Makeup is becoming a lot more common with men, and so they're learning how to shade, learning how to thin their nose, or enhance their eye color, or whatever it happens to be. So that's what the short story was exploring. And when I reread the story a couple of days ago, I was sort of taken aback about how I had kind of really fleshed out this idea. When I wrote it, I didn't really think that hard. I was going to write about a reporter who was interviewing people who were getting plastic surgery to look like everybody else on purpose. And then, in the confines of their home or in just their day-to-day life, they could switch it up if they felt like it. And what the implications were that for, when you look like everybody else, how do you find your individuality? If you look like everybody else, what distinguishes you from the other human race? Do we need that distinction anymore? People could change their skin tone too. So it was an interesting idea. I read it and thought, wow, I really kind of had an idea going. But I have to say, I do think this is one of my weaker stories that's been published, only because there wasn't quite a story. You know what I mean? There wasn't quite too much tension. It was more of someone just talking about this weird ass trend that's going on in the world and how it came about and what the future was looking like. I didn't necessarily needed to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I thought more about the journalism that I was reading at the time and how those articles and those personal essays were reading, and tried to mimic that in my short story. And I think I did a pretty good job. When the story was published, again, Kelly had a little reading party. I went and read a little bit from this story, and that was kind of it. It wasn't really a story that I felt was going to take off or do anything, but I am really glad I wrote it. I'm glad that I kind of played around with this idea. Who knows? I may revisit it sometime in the future. Maybe I'll write, more from this reporter's voice and, make it a much longer collection or something like that. I don't really know. But I do know that it is fun to explore possibilities. And I'm really appreciative that this story helped me explore some ideas that I had knocking around. And it also was a different kind of story, epistolary. I guess I want to end this by just saying that, not every story that you write is going to be the greatest story or going to have the hugest impact. I'm just really grateful that I got to write a really fun story and it's out in the world. And I'm really proud of it. Again, it is available on Amazon. If you want to give Kelly some money, because she gets it, I don't. But it was one more, publication that I could put on my resume. It was one more social proof that, you could read my stuff and enjoy it. Is one more for the list, basically. And honestly, that's all I can hope for with my short stories. I don't expect, because short stories are just not that popular, I don't expect them to take off like wildfire. But it is good for my ego. It is good for my resume. And it's good for my imagination. All the writers, I think we all want to play around and write fun stories at one point. And that was a fun story to write. And I'm really glad that it's out in the world. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.